Korea's Unification Church is no stranger to controversy. While critics call it a cult, believers hail its founder, Sun Myung-moon, as their messiah and king. Today, a family feud and disgruntled former members are threatening to split the church and disrupt its $2 billion business empire. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. This week, 101 East takes you into the kingdom of Reverend Moon.
Chonpyong, South Korea, is a resort town known for its tranquility and scenery. Today, it's also the site of a spectacle like no other.
Brides, grooms, and guests, please rise. The King of Kings and the officiators for the blessing ceremony, the true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind, the Reverend Dr. Sun Myung-moon and Dr. Hak Chang-han-moon will now enter.
Inside a spanking new stadium, some 2,500 people from all over the world prepare to say their wedding vows. Many more will renew their promises to each other today.
만장에 서 있는 축복받는 당신의 선남선대.
It's a mass wedding ceremony the world has come to associate with this man.
완성할 성숙된 선남선녀라서
Reverend Moon Sung-myung, founder of a religion he calls Unificationism. Some 200,000 followers, known to outsiders as Moonies, worship the Reverend as their king and messiah. They believe he was put on earth to start a family, which will help bring about world peace, and that marriage to a fellow believer allows them to join God's sinless lineage.
지도자로 양성할 것을 약속하나며.
In the past, the Reverend match-made every single couple. So great was their faith, some followers only met their spouse on their wedding day. Things are a little different these days. Most of these couples are second-generation Unificationists, matched not by Moon but by their parents.
We met through my parents. The parents knew each other, and so through that they suggested, and then we decided to communicate, and then we met here. But actually we knew each other when we were young.
Changes like this are all part of the Church's larger plans for the future. Reverend Moon is now in his 90s, and Unificationists must prepare for perhaps their biggest challenge yet: a future without their founder.
Welcome to the King of Peace, True Parents Life Exhibition. Reverend Sun Myung-moon and Mrs. Hak Chang-han-moon are the true parents of humanity, the teacher of the people, the king and queen of cosmic peace, and the one who...
No one can accuse Reverend Moon of being too modest. He's never shied away from proclaiming that he was born to achieve great things.
and peace for all humanity.
Opponents accuse him of running little more than a cult, and often paint him as delusional and sinister. But followers say his achievements speak for themselves.
소련에 가셔가지고 고르바초프 대통령하고 만나시고 91년에 김일성 주석하고 북한에 가가지고 만나시게 됩니다. 아이젠하워 대통령 만나시고요, 또 닉슨 대통령 만나시고 큰 대회를 많이 하시게 됩니다.
Moon started with nothing, but over the past 5 decades worked hard to establish both economic and political clout. He cultivated friends in high places and built a multi-billion-dollar business empire. In the 70s and 80s, the Unification Church took a strong stand against communism, a position that won Moon's supporters in the United States.
They experienced political power as essential in their growth. President Nixon and CIA sent a telegram to the Unification Church in which they really expressed their appreciation to what the Unification Church member, which is support to the Vietnam War. Thereafter, they have many support from the government, especially the Republican. And then, Unification Church realized to settle down in Korea, they need political power, not just a religious practice, but political power. So they approached the military dictatorship. So under the care of the military dictatorship, they had been grown so fast.
It's a huge and controversial legacy, one the Reverend's children are poised to inherit. They hold privileged positions as members of what unificationists call the true family, a special group of people chosen by God as an example for all to follow. But all is not well in the House of Moon. At the center of the crisis, Hyunjin, the oldest living son. For a long time, he was widely regarded as his father's anointed heir. But during the last decade, Reverend Moon made his youngest son, Hyungjin, head of his spiritual empire. Fourth son, Kukjin, was put in charge of the church's $2 billion business arm, the Tongil Foundation. Hyunjin was effectively sidelined.
It's been very difficult. I was very close to my older brother for many years, and he's had a very difficult time accepting the decision which my father has made.
The decision polarized the church and continues to do so today. This footage, taken in May 2010, shows Hyunjin's supporters cheering as he marches into a branch of the Unification Church in Sao Paulo, Brazil. His men then physically remove the Korean preacher, Reverend Shin Dong-mo.
Is it your agenda to isolate me from the unification community? And Shin Dong-mo!
The following day, Reverend Shin is humiliated before members of the congregation.
너 조그만 녀석이 그렇게 큰 머리 있어 내가 기가 막혔어. 너 편집이고 보니까 그 바보 같은 녀석.
Reverend Shin is accused of scheming with Hyunjin's brothers.
이제 이 시대는 너희들이 이 거짓말 뒤에서 못 숨길 거야. 예, 그렇습니다. 너 국진이하고 형진이한테 그것도 말해줘. 말해줘!
Hyunjin declined our request for an interview. This is what his younger brother has to say.
My elder brother and his wife's family is in a situation where they have been in disobedience to my father. And so from the church's doctrine, that's not, as a church perspective, that's not in line with our doctrine. Nearly 100% of the members are with my father. What my father is not able to control is one church foundation, because my brother and his wife's family, which is Dr. Kwok's family, controls the board of directors in that foundation, and that foundation has many church assets.
One of those assets the church fought over is the conservative US newspaper, The Washington Times. Reverend Moon founded the broadsheet in 1982, and over the years pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into it. But when Hyunjin took over, those funds dried up amid disagreements over editorial direction. As rumours swirled that the paper was on the verge of closing down, Reverend Moon took over its debts and brought it back from his son for $1.
The problem is that we are a church, and the assets which are in this church are the contributions of all the members of the church. And so really my father doesn't have any choice but to protect the assets of the church. And neither do I.
Does the inner aspect of ourselves, this so-called spirit, does it have a separate existence from the body?
Julian Gray is a 30-year member of the Unification Church. He now works in Seoul as editor of its English language magazine.
I'm a unificationist because I believe that it is our mandate and responsibility to be able to solve the problems that exist in this world for the sake of future generations, and so that the world will be a better place. And we exist as spirit and body.
Like many long-term members, Gray is aware of the ongoing feud within the True family. He says it's not affected his faith.
We have the term true family, but we all know that it doesn't mean that everybody in Reverend and Mrs. Moon's family is perfect or infallible. That's not the meaning of it. It means that they're a family that God is somehow trying to use in the world at the moment.
Not everyone is as steadfast as Gray. Lee Yong-sun and her late husband Park Jun-chol were members of the Unification Church for 3 decades. They served as missionaries and pastors, but eventually left disillusioned. Lee's husband subsequently wrote a book about their time in the church.
활동을 하다 보니까 말과 행동이 너무나 다르다는 것을 느끼고 탈퇴를 하게 되었습니다. 파출부를 하면서 식당에 가서 제가 주방장 일하면서 설거지하면서 그래가 돈 벌어가 제가 헌금을 했어요. 교회가 어려우니까. 그렇게 제가 헌금을 한 그 돈이 그 자녀들이나 그 가족들은 그렇게 잘 먹고 잘 산다는 것은 그것은 정말 너무 이해가 되지 않는 그런 일이었어요. 제가 생각할 때도. 예.
We regarded that as part of our spiritual training or formative spiritual training, and that was really what it was. We weren't sending the money to Reverend and Mrs. Moon's family to support their family. These funds were being used to build the movement at its earlier stages in the West, in America, and in Europe too.
Lee has made it her mission to help former unificationists adjust to life outside the church. She won't reveal how many have come to her for support, but says there's been a steady stream of people.
지금 내용은 이제 조상 구원식 그 헌금 내역에서 제일 많이 이제 궁금해 그 돈을 사실 그렇게 많은 돈을 계속 받아가지고 어떻게 쓰는지 모르겠고 방송에서 인터뷰 나와가지고.
They're not alone. Hundreds of unificationists in Japan have launched lawsuits to reclaim donations made to their former church. Many say they were told the money would help liberate their ancestors from hell. Unification Church spokesperson An Ho-yul defends the practice.
만일에 우리 조상 중에서 죄를 많이 짓고 있는 사람이 지옥에 있다. 그런데 만일에 이 조상 회원식을 통해서 그분이 지옥에서 천국으로 올 수 있다. 지옥에서 해방이 될 수 있다. 그러면 이건 얼마나 기쁜 소식이냐.
It's Sunday, and Moon's followers have gathered at the church in Seoul. But the Reverend no longer leads the service.
많이 우리는 죄 많이 없다고 생각했어도
He's given the job to his youngest son and spiritual heir, Hyungjin.
아무리 우리는 완벽한 삶을 살았어도 우리는 사실 하나님 앞에 불신과 의심.
Observers say Hyungjin's approach is a lot less formal than his father's. He's been credited with bringing a much younger vibe to the church.
He's changed his worship style, which is somewhat work positively. It helps new members, younger members, and the newcomers to be more familiar with the Unification Church worship style.
이번에 원국 비스컵 대회에서 제가 아버님께서 아주 세게 무엇을 하라고 하시니까.
Today, there's a special surprise for the congregation. Hyungjin is an accomplished practitioner of martial arts who has trained hard for years. But this isn't just a stunt to entertain the church. There's a deeper message.
저는 물론 그것 동안에 그 명상 시간, 여자는 수행하는 그 시간 동안에 그런 것들 연습했지만 우리는 소련하고 그런 나라를 이겨낼 수 있었지 약했기 때문에 아닙니다. 아버님께서 사랑하신 레이건 대통령도 아주 거스로 불들었지만 강한 정치로 나갔습니다.
My father worked very hard to assist Ronald Reagan to be elected. And Ronald Reagan, under his presidency, led the largest military buildup in U.S. history in the modern age. And as a result of that strength of America and the power of America and the strength of American arms, the world saw peace, not war. And the Soviet Union collapsed. The Berlin Wall came down, and we had peace.
For Kukjin, it's been a busy few years. While his younger brother took care of the church, he was charged with overhauling the church's financial arm. The Tongil Foundation had been deeply affected by the Asian financial crisis, and in 2004 was on the verge of disintegrating. Companies like Ilwa, which produces drinks and ginseng products, were barely viable.
And when we started the restructuring process, we actually were making a very significant loss. In terms of operating profit, we were probably losing, according to the financial statements, more than $40 million. We've been able to make the business group much more self-sustainable. And we've brought it to a point where the businesses now are no longer a burden to our church, but are actually a help to our church, and they're able to contribute to our church.
Some companies under the Tongil Foundation umbrella will perhaps never be profitable. There's the globe-trotting Universal Ballet Company, widely seen as one of the best in Asia. And Songnam Ilwa Chunma, South Korea's most successful professional football club.
우리 문선명 총재님께서는 워낙 축구를 사랑하시고 좋아하시고 그래서 그 정열적인 게 우리 선수들한테 다 몸소 우리 선수들 느끼고 있기 때문에 너무 잘 전달받고 있고 또 보이지 않게 뒤에서 많은 스포트를 해주기 때문에.
It's a combination of public service and good public relations, an attempt at making unificationism feel a little more mainstream, and for church members, a chance to root for their own team. Over the past few years, Kukjin and Hyungjin have worked hard to establish themselves. This footage from 2009, provided by the Unification Church, shows the brothers hosting the 20th anniversary celebrations of the Seige Times, a paper founded by their father. Attending the event, top politicians and business leaders from South Korea.
Having defined the essence of God, my Father, the true parent of all humanity and the Peace King, has empowered us to resemble God and become one with Him. It is from this understanding that my Father has proclaimed that we are one family under God, and it is from this truth that my Father has given the motto of love heaven, love mankind, love nation to the Seige Times.
The paper, like many other companies under the Tongil Foundation, was set up to promote Reverend Moon's ideas. Over the past few years, Moon has turned his attention away from defeating communism to promoting what he calls a strong career. Managing editor Kang Ho-won is clear about his mandate.
우리 그 재단에서 강한 대한민국을 이제 추진하고 있는데, 이 강한 대한민국이라고 결국 이제 남북 통일과 그 한국 사회의 미래 비전에 대한 그 이야기입니다. 그리고 그 주변 국가 그 평화로운 관계를 어떻게 하면 유지시킬 수 있을 것인가 하는 그게 우리 굉장히 큰 화두 중에 하나입니다.
식구 여러분 안녕하십니까? 청기 3년 철력 2월 평화 매거진입니다. 새봄이 왔습니다. 화사한 꽃이 피어나고 생명이 약동하는 계절인데요. 우리도 새 생명을 인도해.
Over at the Unification Church's production company, the same message is being reinforced.
참부모님께서 지난 한 달 동안 강한 대한민국 범국민 운동본부를 비롯해 여성연합
Today, a new episode for Peace TV, the church's magazine program, is being recorded.
이달의 참부모님 말씀은 두 가지를 준비했습니다. 강한 대한민국 범국민 운동본부 출범식에서 하신 아버님 말씀과 일본 순회 집회에서 하신 어머님 말씀입니다. 감사합니다.
My father has directed me to work on educating people throughout Korea about the need for Korea to be strong, and so that we can make a stronger nation and a stronger democracy, which has enough military power and defense power to preserve our national security and to defend ourselves from possible overreaching of other neighbors.
Like his father, Kuk-jin clearly doesn't believe in doing things in half measures. He recently acquired Shinjong, a small defense manufacturer located in Ulsan, a 2-hour train ride from Seoul. The company produces military vehicles. Clients so far include the Indonesian police and Egyptian Air Force. It hopes eventually to supply the Korean military.
Tongil Group has a good reputation for the military, and they have the various routes to contact the military person. So, after member of the Tongil groups, and we can, it is much easier to contact the military person.
To non-believers, it might seem like a contradiction. Reverend Moon calls himself the King of Peace, and yet he's not averse to selling weapons of war.
We believe that peace is preserved through strength, and that if you want to have peace, you actually have to prepare for war. We have been very misunderstood by society in general for a lot of years. And in Korea, many of our church members were not able to get jobs if they expressed their religion, or some of them were fired if they were found out to be members of our church. Well, our hope is that society can respect our religious beliefs.
These young unificationists are now learning those beliefs. But what will happen to their church once its founder is gone?
The Unification Church is not only a religious group, but it's a business group. Even though Moon dies, it will continue. It will go on.
For now, Sunday school is all fun and games. It's unlikely these children are being taught about the rift within their church, or about the challenges facing the family held up as an example for all to follow.